My father grabs the folder with shaking hands. "No, this isn't possible," he whispers. My mother snatches it away before anyone else can read it. Her face loses all color. Guests stop talking. Even the music seems quieter. I stand there in my wedding dress, watching the two people who spent my entire life convincing me I would never be enough. My fiancé, Mason Bennett, calmly folds his arms. "I'd read page 3, he says. Dad flips through the papers. His mouth slowly falls open. You own 68%. Mason nods once. "As of this morning." Mom suddenly looks at me. "Honey, we can explain." "Explain." "After 26 years. I smile for the first time all day. Oh, I think everyone deserves to hear this. Every guest turns toward us. My father takes one nervous step back. That's when my grandmother quietly says, "I've waited years for this moment." My name is Zoe Brooks. I'm 26 years old, and I'm telling this because sometimes the people who should love you the most spend years trying to convince you that you're worth nothing. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. From the outside, my family looked perfect. Nice house. Successful parents. Holiday photos that made everyone jealous. Inside those walls it was different. Nothing I ever did was enough. If I brought home an A, my father asked why it wasn't an A+. If I won second place, my mother reminded me someone else had won first. When I got accepted into college, Dad laughed. "You'll probably quit after one semester." Every dream I had became another reason for them to criticize me. After years of hearing it, I started believing them. I stopped speaking up. I stopped trying new things. I even apologized when things weren't my fault. Then when I was 23, everything changed. I met Mason. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop downtown after I accidentally spilled my drink on his laptop bag. I was already apologizing before he even looked up. Instead of getting angry, he smiled. "It's just coffee." That confused me. People weren't usually kind to me. Over the next few months, we kept running into each other. Soon those accidents became planned lunches. Then weekend trips. Then late-night conversations where I slowly admitted how my parents treated me. Mason never interrupted. He just listened. One evening he looked straight at me. "Zoe, has anyone ever told you that you apologize too much?" I laughed. "I probably deserve to." He shook his head. "No. Just one word." But nobody had ever defended me like that before. The first time he met my parents, I was terrified. Dinner lasted less than 20 minutes before Dad started. "So Mason, what exactly do you see in Zoe?" I wanted to disappear. Mom laughed like it was a joke. Mason didn't. "I see someone who's stronger than she realizes." Dad rolled his eyes. "You'll figure it out eventually." On the drive home, I expected Mason to agree with them. Instead, he asked me something I wasn't ready to answer. "Why do you let them decide who you are?" I didn't have an answer. Because they always had. Months later, Mason proposed. I cried before I even said yes. Not because I was surprised. Because I couldn't believe someone actually chose me. When we announced our engagement, my parents smiled for the cameras. The second everyone left, Mom leaned toward me. "Don't get too comfortable." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled with that warmth. "Men like Mason don't stay forever." Dad nodded. "Enjoy it while it lasts." For the next year, they repeated the same message in different ways. "He's settling. He feels sorry for you. Eventually he'll realize he can do better." Little by little, they tried to plant doubt in my mind. But they didn't know something. Mason had started asking questions about their business. Questions they never expected anyone to ask. And every answer led him somewhere they never saw coming. The first time Mason mentioned my parents' company again, I thought he was just curious. Looking back, I should have realized he had already noticed things that I hadn't. One evening, we were sitting on the balcony of our apartment in Charleston, watching the sun disappear behind the buildings. He looked over at me. "Zoe, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Has your dad ever explained how his company makes money?" I laughed. "No, he always said it was none of my business." Mason nodded slowly. "I figured." I didn't think much of it until a few weeks later. He came home carrying a notebook filled with pages of notes. What is all that? I asked. Public records. I blinked. You've been researching my parents. I'm researching the company. There isn't a difference. He smiled gently. There is. Over the next few months, Mason spent his evenings reading financial reports, business filings, and local news articles. Everything he looked at was public information. Nothing illegal. Nothing secret. He simply paid attention. One night he placed several papers across the dining table. Look at this. I sat beside him. He pointed at different dates. The company has been losing money for years. That can't be right. It is. But Dad always talks about record profits. He talks about them. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. He wasn't accusing anyone. He was showing me facts. For the first time in my life, I realized my parents weren't as untouchable as they wanted everyone to believe. Still, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. I don't care about their business, I told him. I only want them to leave us alone. Mason reached for my hand. I know. Then why keep digging? Because people who spend years controlling others usually depend on everyone believing they're powerful. His words stayed with me. Weeks passed. Wedding planning filled most of our days. Every appointment became another chance for my parents to criticize me. Mom complained about my dress. Dad mocked our guest list. Nothing escaped their judgment. One afternoon I finally broke down. I don't know why I keep hoping they'll change. Mason hugged me. Because they're your parents. I just want them to be happy for me. They've spent too many years trying to make you earn something that should have been free. I wiped away my tears. What if they're right? They're not. How can you be so sure? He smiled. Because I've watched you become confident whenever they're not around. That sentence changed everything. For days I couldn't stop thinking about it. He was right. Around my parents I felt small. Around everyone else I laughed. I dreamed. I made plans. I finally understood the problem had never been me. A month before the wedding, Mason received a phone call that lasted almost an hour. When he hung up, he looked calmer than ever. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded. Better than okay. What happened? I've been working with a group of investors. I frowned. For what? He smiled, but this time he didn't answer immediately. I'll tell you soon. A week later, he asked me one question. Do you trust me? With everything? Then let me handle the rest. I never asked again. On the morning of our wedding, while I was getting ready, my parents pulled me into a private room. Mom crossed her arms. Your fiancé is only marrying you out of pity. Dad nodded without hesitation. You'll see soon enough. Instead of crying like they expected. I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I already knew something they didn't. My parents looked at each other, confused by my smile. Mom frowned. Why are you smiling? I straightened my wedding dress and took a slow breath. For once, I said, I'm not going to let you ruin one of the happiest days of my life. Dad let out a short laugh. You always say that. No, I replied calmly, I used to. Before either of them could answer, someone knocked on the door. Zoe, it's time, the wedding planner called. I walked away without looking back. For the first time in 26 years, I left them standing there without apologizing. The ceremony was beautiful. The flowers, the music, the warm afternoon sun, everything felt almost unreal. As I walked down the aisle in Charleston, I saw Mason smiling at me. Not because he felt sorry for me. Because he loved me. That single thought gave me more confidence than my parents had ever managed to take away. We exchanged our vows. We slipped the rings onto each other's fingers. When the officiant announced us as husband and wife, the room filled with applause. I noticed my parents clapping too. To everyone else, they looked like proud parents. Only I knew the truth. The reception began with laughter, dancing, and speeches. Then Mom walked over with 2 glasses of champagne. I know we've had our differences, she said with a practiced smile. Let's forget everything and start over. Years ago, I would have believed her. Now I could see she kept glancing toward the crowd, making sure everyone was watching. She wasn't trying to make peace. She was protecting her image. I appreciate the offer, I said politely, but today isn't about pretending. Her smile disappeared. Before she could answer, Mason joined us carrying a thick blue folder. He placed it gently into my hands. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. He turned toward my parents. "Actually, I think this belongs to you." Dad took the folder with a confident grin. "I'm guessing this is some kind of wedding surprise." "It is," Mason answered. Dad opened the first page. His smile faded. He flipped to the second. Then the third. His hand started shaking. This can't be real." Around us, conversation slowly stopped. Guests noticed the sudden silence. Mom grabbed the folder from him. "What are you talking about?" She scanned the pages. Her face lost all color. "No." Mason remained completely calm. "Last month, the investment group I represent legally purchased the majority ownership of your company." Dad stared at him. "That's impossible. It was finalized this morning. You planned this." "I planned to protect the people you kept hurting." Several guests moved closer, trying to understand what was happening. My grandmother quietly stepped beside me. She squeezed my hand. "I've waited years to see someone finally stand up to them." Dad looked around the room. "You can't embarrass us like this." I met his eyes. "I didn't embarrass you. You did that yourselves." For the first time in my life, he had no quick answer. Then Mason spoke again. "Oh, there's one more thing everyone should know." Dad's head snapped toward him. "What now?" Mason looked at the guests before turning back to my parents. "The company employees deserve to hear the truth too." The room became completely silent. Even I didn't know what he was about to reveal. I looked at him in surprise. He gave me a reassuring smile. Then he opened another envelope. And everything was about to change. The room felt frozen. Every guest was staring at Mason as he held the second envelope. Even I didn't know what was inside. My parents stood stiff, like they were trying to hold their world together with pure willpower. Mason opened it slowly. Inside were printed statements, emails, and reports. He didn't rush. He wanted everyone to see. "This isn't about revenge," he said calmly. "It's about reality." Mom forced a laugh. "You're going to lecture us in front of everyone." Mason looked at her. "No, I'm going to show them what you've been hiding for years." A quiet wave moved through the crowd. He turned a page. Employees were told bonuses were removed because of budget cuts. He paused. But internal records show the profits increased that same year. Murmurs started spreading through the guests. Dad stepped forward. "You have no right." "I have every right," Mason interrupted, still calm, "because as of this morning I own controlling interest that includes transparency." My father stopped. For the first time he had nothing to say. Mason continued. "There are people in your company who worked overtime for years without fair pay adjustments. Some were told promotions were coming that never existed." Mom's voice turned sharp. "This is a private matter." "It was," Mason said, "until you made it everyone's problem." Silence dropped like a heavy curtain. I could feel my heart pounding, but not with fear anymore. With clarity. This wasn't chaos. It was truth finally catching up. A woman from the guest table stood up. "Wait, I work for your company," she said quietly. "Is this real?" Mason looked at her. "Yes, and your contract will be reviewed under new management." Another man stood. "So everything you were told was false?" Mason didn't hesitate. "Some of it, yes." The room broke into whispers. My parents looked around like the walls were closing in. Dad turned to me. "Zoe, tell him to stop this." I met his eyes. For years that same voice had controlled me. But it didn't anymore. "I didn't do this," I said softly. "You did." Mom's expression shifted. Not anger now. Fear. "Please," she said, stepping toward me, "we're your family." That word hit differently than it used to. Family. The thing they always used like a chain. Mason gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "You get to choose what family means now," he said. I looked at my parents. All the years of criticism. All the doubt. All the moments they made me feel small. And then I looked at the man beside me who never asked me to shrink. "I think," I said slowly, "I've spent my whole life trying to earn love that should have been given." Mom shook her head. "We raised you." "No," I interrupted, voice steady, "you controlled me." Yet a long silence followed. Even the music from the reception felt far away. Dad exhaled sharply. This isn't over. Mason nodded once. No, he said, it's not. He turned to the guests. From today forward, the company will be rebuilt: transparency, fair pay, respect. A few people began to clap. Then more joined. Not for revenge, but for justice. My parents stood alone in the center of it all. For the first time, they weren't the loudest voice in the room. They were just people being seen clearly. As the crowd slowly shifted back into celebration, Mason leaned closer to me. You okay? He asked softly. I looked at him. Then at the life I had just stepped into. Yes, I said, I think I finally am. Outside, the Charleston sun was setting. And for the first time in my life, it didn't feel like I was living in anyone's shadow anymore.